World.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your boy Meets World, the fun cast. I am Siege.
Tony Curtis, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well because today, we got a special guest.
Special guest in the house, y'all.
Welcome to the show, Prime.
Heyo.
It's me, the PR. I am me. What's going on?
I love that intro. It's me, the PRIME. You had like a freestyle ready to go. Like I feel like if the beat was there, you would have just wrote it, and I'm here for it.
Well, I mean, look, y'all can't hear. I hear a beat. All right, like there's legit a beat going on in the background.
This is Prime from Prime Nostalgia. Tell the people a little bit about yourself, man.
Got a pop culture podcast about the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I sometimes interview people from those times, and we talk about movies, brackets, shows, basically whatever comes to my mind, because I got a good range of nostalgia. So
what are some topics that you've discussed on your podcast?
Interview different people. Keenan, we had Keenan Thompson on.
Whoa!
On our show.
Oh, you are talking.
Man.
That is his like A1. Like,
dude, Keenan was my dude in the 90s. That is crazy that you interviewed him. I'm gonna have to check out that interview.
Yeah, we just okay. I'm gonna put it to you like this. Basically, anybody from all that we've had on our show, except for Nick Cannon, Amanda, and Laura.
Honestly, good for you. You're
wow.
doing good
You've
by
had
avoiding Nick Cannon. You could be pregnant right now.
Yeah, you would have kids. You would have all these kids running around if you
had spoken to Nick Cannon. So
honestly, my gosh,
it was the right thing.
That's exciting, man. Yeah, I definitely have to check that out. Cool. Well, we're happy that we have you on. You're clearly someone in the know of the 90s pop culture zeitgeist, so you have a lot you can bring to this.
What is your history with Boy Meets World? Like, when did you start watching? Did you watch it when it was first on? What's going on?
I did not watch it when it was first on because I'm going to say I'm a sitcom person through and through. And when I saw a glimpse of Boy Meets World at whatever time this was these later seasons where they were adding more drama. So, every time something sad happens, they played a little music. And at the time, I was like, I want to laugh. So I put off Boy Meets World for a long time until maybe 8th grade. I was watching one of the younger episodes. It was like maybe season 2 even. They spilled a smoothie over the kitchen or something.
Yeah.
And I think the mom came in. She was like, "This can't be my house dirty like this." Then she walked back out. I don't know why I thought it was funny for me to keep watching. But then I started binging. That whole summer, I binged the whole Boy Meets World. I bought all the DVDs. And yeah.
When you like something, you go all in. You saw one funny clip, and you were like, you know what? I'm buying a whole set.
Well, I saw one funny clip, and they were playing it on Disney every day, or whatever they're playing it every day. So I was watching the episodes, and then the episodes, I was like, there's got to be more to this. And then when I seen it was 7 seasons, I was like, well, I got a lot to watch. So,
Prime, you bring up a great point that the show takes such a more dramatic turn in the later seasons in a way that I didn't even think about how that would, turn kids off, because when I was watching the show live, I had watched it from season 1 and I kind of matured with the show, but to jump into a season in season 6, it's completely different. Like, we always talk about how the show has eras where season 1 feels like its own thing, 2 and 3 feels like its own thing, 4 and 5 feel like their own thing. And college definitely feels so removed and it doesn't feel as fun. You're right. The earlier seasons feel more innately fun because there's a childlike energy that just isn't there when they're trying to figure out how to pay bills and stuff as adults.
I can enjoy the whole show now looking at it, but coming in to seeing this episode first, I was like, what is this, Dawson's Creek or something? I was like,
yeah.
It's really apparent how much they are trying to mirror things that are also on TV. So that the fact that you were like, what is this, Dawson's Creek? There are plenty of episodes where you're like, it has a Friends Seinfeld thing going on with Eric and Jack and Rachel and their whole thing. It just feels like it's obvious that the writers are either from other shows or like trying to be on other shows.
I mean, even this episode itself, it feels like there's a Dawson's Creek plot and a Friends plot happening at the same time.
But I think this is why because this is my favorite show, by the way.
Ooh, how did this go from I did watch it to this is my favorite?
Because most likely things that are coming of age, it's like my thing. And watching this in middle school, I was like, I guess I was the perfect coming of age to watch this. So that's probably why I like shows that grow with their audience. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. Like I'm a Power Rangers fan. I'm gonna just get that out the way. Big Power Rangers fan.
Love
and
them.
that first run, they grew with their audience because like they were all still in Angel Grove till like season 6 maybe. So I kind of like that they just kept that
The
audience.
In Space season.
Yeah, Space, one of the best. But yeah, they kept going. So
I love how in the 90s when we really wanted to do something, we just put it in space. I mean, I said in the 90s, but I mean that was how we saw Fast and the Furious. We were like, you know what this needs? Space travel.
To your point, Siege, I literally just watched Leprechaun in Space 2 days ago. So you're right. There was a lot of things going on in space at the time. Did you guys remember that Family Matters ends by Urkel going into space?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Not only does he go into space, they put him in a rocket and then they Sandra Bullock him. He's in his astronaut outfit and he's floating freely through space away, like hotwire a satellite into a rocket so that he can get home. It's insane. Like the whole last season of Family Matters is insane, but yeah, they definitely go to space in there.
That is
I got
insanity.
good and bads with the last season of Family Matters. Like I said, I don't know. I'm a sucker for older seasons. I like them when they're older, but not when they're in like past the college age. Like I like them when they're probably 18 or 16, 17, 18, those years, because they're old enough to do more stuff, but they're not young to where they can't do anything. So
like in this show, Boy Meets World especially, like I think that the overall consensus is that the most popular seasons were those ones in like late high school, were the ones that people kind of remember the most and identify with the most.
Honestly, I would say with you, like that's like the sweet spot because like we're in season 6 right now. We've been recording forever, which by the way, I do want to like go into the morning announcements because I want to talk about the pod. But anyway, at this point in time, I'm like, oh, the really good episodes were actually like a season or two ago. At this point in time, it's just like every other week. I don't know. It could be good. It could be bad. We can have a plot line with thought. We can have, like not like.
Which I would even say, even this plot line that we're going to get into, as like interesting as this episode is, doesn't really feel genuine to the show in a lot of ways, and I want to talk about that.
I can't wait to that. All right, you know what? Let's just get into it. All right, let's start with the morning announcements really quickly. I have been listening to Pod Meets World. It's funny to hear them kind of repeat some of the assumptions that you and I repeated early on. Like they're like, oh, Topeka's in way more episodes in the rest of the season. We just haven't gotten there yet. I'm like, no, boy. She's not.
It's never gonna come. That's the thing. We were binge watching this. We were like, "Oh, Topanga's the central star to this story, right? Like she's like a huge character." Not until like season 4, honestly.
Exactly, and they say something like, "There's like a female character." They're like, "She's kind of written kind of like as a bitch," and they're like, "Yeah, I think it was just like a one-off thing." They treat women really better later on. I was like, again, no.
There's two.
You are not right about that.
No, there's central archetypes. You're either Topanga and you're perfect, or you're a bitch and you were some chick that Shawn made out with at a party and never talked to again.
Those episodes where they're like kissing somebody every other episode are going to be rough.
Yeah.
It's going to be rough for
Absolutely.
Writer Strong. It's going to be rough.
Like also, I think one of the things I picked up from listening to it is this idea of the two Boy Meets World. Because it is pretty apparent that there's like a world that Cory and Shawn and Topanga and Angela are in, and then there's a complete, like, I don't know, like you would think they never went to the same school. The idea that Jack and Rachel and Eric like never see each other.
And even in this episode, I'm like, oh, Ryder's gonna do poetry. Where's his brother? The relationship between Shawn and Jack was just like the relationship between Shawn and Turner, where they built up all this momentum only for it not to come into play at all. They killed off Turner. Jack hardly spends any time with his brother. What was the point?
But that's actually what's interesting. Like, they said they were talking about casting, and they talked about how Matthew Lawrence just got placed in the show. Like, he didn't audition. There wasn't like any, like, they didn't have the idea of Jack and then went hunting for someone. ABC was like, put this guy in this show. Wow. And when you know that, it starts to make things a little bit more clear.
I still feel like he works. His first season, I don't feel like works because he's such a different guy. When he's like self-centered and he was like, yeah, I got so-and-so body fat. That guy feels like a guy that will work from the buildup that we got from what we heard. So
absolutely. And I do want to say we got a voicemail from one of our listeners talking about that episode.
No, it was actually, I think it's the episode before.
It's the episode before. So sorry.
Yeah. So Topanga and Shawn make out for a commercial or an ad for a college, as children do for colleges. And Cory sees this. He gets really upset, and he's trying to convince Angela that, like, hey, it had to mean something because they kissed. And Angela takes it upon herself to make out with Cory to prove that, oh, you could kiss someone and it just doesn't mean anything.
So here is a response from one of our listeners. Hold on.
So I have two feelings about Angela kissing Cory. My first one is that she definitely should have cleared it with Topanga first, because Topanga knows, we all know that Cory is crazy. Topanga probably would have been like, Angela, could you please do this just to prove this point to him so we can all move on with our lives? Like, I think it would have been a very easy, like, conversation. The second thing is that Cory did not deserve to kiss fine-ass Angela. Like, he doesn't deserve any of these girls kissing him. Not Lauren, not Topanga, and especially not Angela. Like, just how did he get all these fine women that want to kiss him? Even if it's as a joke, how?
All right, that was Amber. Amber wants to know how.
Fair questions, Amber. Fair questions. I don't know how.
I'll say right off the bat, I completely agree with her in this idea of Angela should have gotten Topanga's permission before she did anything.
I'm probably skipping ahead. But isn't there an episode where like they're just laying in bed like for no reason, and then they come in, they're like,
"That's the same episode." No, that's like, the same one.
God, I'm not doing nothing, and then they just like,
that's the same episode. Same episode.
But then again, it's Cory, so she's like, I don't gotta worry about Cory doing that.
Maybe that was Angela's mindset. Like,
though,
clearly, I would never hook up with this dude. So
here's the thing. It's like, I will say this. You say that. We just ran down a list. You got Lauren, you got Angela, like Cory.
Topanga.
Cory gets his when he wants. So this idea of like, oh, I don't have to worry about Cory. I think you should be worried about Cory a little bit more.
If I'm I almost called her Trina. If I'm Ange, I'm like, bro, you are so annoying. Why everybody does not have to do what you say? Come on, man.
Oh,
that's what this episode's all about.
That's what this episode's supposed to be about. So thank you, Amber, for submitting that phone call. If you guys want to leave us a message, you can go to our
Anchor website. Yeah, it's actually, linked in the description of the podcast and the YouTube videos, where you can just click the link and leave a voicemail for us, and we'd love to listen to it and play it on the podcast.
Even if you want to troll and do like a Mr. Feeney impression, that'd be nice.
Oh, we will play your Mr. Feeney.
Please do impressions. Please leave us voicemails as the characters using your best voice, and we will answer it in response to, oh, so Jack left this question for us. We would love it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into this episode because I'm looking at the time. You want to hit us with the tell me about it?
Yeah. Tell us about it. Your boy Shawn has got bars, but when Cory steals the mic, he reads some things that Shawn doesn't like.
I'm very proud of you. And then also, you did a little key change. Usually you're a little bit higher.
It's too early for that. No, bro.
Okay, this is season 6, episode 9, Poetic License, an Ode to Holden Caulfield. Cory reads Shawn's poem at the local coffee house without realizing the truth behind what he is reading. Meanwhile, Eric, Jack, and Rachel try to cope with the stress of studying for exams.
Prime, what's your first reaction to this episode? Just like your genuine, just first response. You watched it. Like, how do you feel about the episode as a whole? Summary.
As a whole, I'm like, this is one of the more dramatic episodes, obviously. And it kind of sets up Shawn for what we know him as in the future, and unfortunately in Girl Meets World. But
not unfortunately. I heard that slander.
No, I agree. I agree. Unfortunately,
I don't disagree. It's just funny.
look, as a fan of nostalgia, and this is definitely off topic, I would say I think they did Girl Meets World too early as far as a reboot, because they were doing it in an era people were like, I want to reboot, but I don't care about it. Now, you know, you can just do a reboot, put it on Peacock, and it'll still be somewhat in the essence of the show. But that's neither here nor there. I think they should try again. But anyway, no, I mean, this is definitely a different direction. Plus, poems. Shawn Hunter, of all people doing poems, I think they wanted to throw that curveball in there because there's no way this guy who don't even know 2 + 2 in season 2 can be all of a sudden smart enough to write poem like this.
I disagree. I felt like it was very much in the vein of Shawn to be like, don't get me wrong, it's definitely some writer strong coming out in this moment. Like, it feels very much writer strong, but I also do understand, I do see Shawn being someone who would connect with a story like Catcher in the Rye. I feel like there are always these like glimpses of the artistic side of Shawn, like that. And if we want to be honest, that was what drew Shawn and Angela together. It was like that sensitive side of him. So
he was doing poems at Mr. Turner's house. He was doing poems at the trailer park.
I agree with Prime. I gotta say, I 100% agree with Prime, and it was such a distracting element of this show for me because, and like to CJ's point, this is a kid who's grown up with trauma. It would make complete sense for him to have a notebook where he's just slim shading it. He's just in his trailer park writing rhymes, just trying to get through it. That makes complete sense if we had been shown that and not told that in this episode. You know what I mean? Like, it feels almost genuine because it feels genuine to Ryder Strong, who is such an innate part of Shawn Hunter, to where the performance, you're like, oh, I can buy this. I can buy that this character feels this way. But there is no evidence in any show prior leading up to this that would suggest that Shawn has a vocabulary that's extensive, that he is into poetry. Like, I remember him mocking this stuff literally in seasons 5 and 4. So for him in season 6 to just be like, oh yeah, I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. Bruh, do you remember last year? Because you weren't doing it. Like, that's my response. And that's how I felt overall. Very similar to how Prime felt.
Didn't they have one episode where he went to he sat in the college class and he was in high school?
Yeah. And see, that's what I'm saying. Like, so there is this like curiosity, and over the last few episodes, we have seen Shawn really, I want to say, embrace college. Like, one of the things that they are making clear is that college Shawn is not high school Shawn. The high school format didn't work for Shawn.
How does high school Shawn get to be college Shawn? Because I don't know how his grades was looking, but
I mean, like, that's a whole other question. That's a whole other question. We ain't going there yet.
That's that Fenny favoritism, you know.
Yeah. That Fenny favoritism, we can talk again. There are so many points that you're bringing.
There was some of that shit in this episode with Eric too.
But in general, over the last few episodes, we have seen that college Shawn is different than high school. The format of high school didn't work for him. Now that he's in college, he is absorbing the material. He is invested in class. And I can see him actually, like, that's another thing. Like, when you leave high school and you enter college, you do become a different person. And I'm just saying that, like, a lot of college is about finding yourself. And you said that you love coming of age stories, Prime. So, like, I think that one thing we all need to remember is there was a personality we had in high school, and in college, you have a brand new set of people. And so you get to decide who you want to be. And that's a lot about what this episode is that Shawn maybe took too hard of a turn into trying to be college Shawn. And he's leaving behind some of the things that makes him him. At least
Siege, I agree with everything that you said, but the only problem with that is that the episode doesn't tell us that. The episode, it would be so great if Shawn was just like, yeah, I started writing after high school because I just couldn't deal with all the changes or whatever. No, he says, I've been doing this since I can remember. So it's like, to Prime's point, while he was living with Turner, while he was like in Harley's gang for like 3 episodes, like all of that shit that was going on, he was secretly writing poetry in the background. It reminds me of that episode where like Cory has to go to the hospital and he's getting like his tonsils taken out, and he tells Fenny, hey, go to the airport and open up this locker and you're gonna find all my homework for years. I'm a brilliant student. I've just been hiding it this whole time. I was just like, what is going on? Where are all these secret things coming out? We're in season 6. I'm just saying, it's like, if this was a part of Shawn's character, why are we learning it episode 7, season 6?
Also, I got one small gripe about what Steve said, because he said, well, you get to pick who you want to be in college. That is true. But not if you have the same 5, 6 friends. Like, do you really get no chance? Like, hey guys, today I used to be a gangster, but I'm a pastor today, and like I feel no further. I didn't go to church. I'm just a pastor now, and we're good.
As I said, I will say that to your point, I think that the episode talks about how Shawn kind of took like a hard turn in college. And like that's the whole thing. It's like when he told Angela, I want to see other people. Like Shawn, like Cory is just like, who are you? Who is this person? I need, like, everybody's like, I know you wrote poetry. I will give you both the credit that in the episode, everyone around him is like, since when? But it's also funny because Angela and Fenny are like, oh no, I knew you had this in you, and it makes sense that you wrote this. But at the exact same point, to your credit, everyone else is just like, but since when? So you're right.
I'm so glad you brought up Angela's reaction to it, because when it's revealed that, okay, so they start the class with Fenny reading this poem, and Cory kind of mocks it or whatever. And then when it's revealed that Shawn is the writer of the poem, Cory's like, what? Topanga kind of has a look on her face. Angela's like, I knew it. And I'm just like, how? And I don't say that to like mock the show. I'm just saying that like there's clearly such a deeper, more sincere, more dramatic relationship between Shawn and Angela than we've ever seen played out on the show. Like, and that's part of the problem. It's like, I get that she connects to him in like in a way that's resonates with his sensitive side and things like that. I just wish we saw it. I just wish we saw it actualized, because what we're learning is that their relationship meant more to them after their relationship was over. We didn't see what their relationship meant to them when they were actually in it. And so it kind of feels cheap to like retroactively be like, oh yeah, and we connected on all these levels, when it was like, dude, didn't he like like he wasn't even going to go to college with you. Like it wasn't even a conversation for you guys to stay together past high school. Like all of this stuff just feels like it's retroactively thrown in, which is why it feels cheap and lazy from a writing perspective.
Well, I will say it's perfectly fine. When they get back together, we'll see all this. No, we see kissing and more kissing and kissing.
Yeah. You're right. When they get back together, it's all just like physical and nothing.
Spoiler alert!
Personal.
Like, I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen. Just ruining future episodes. But I'll say this. First of all, I think that you're right. As we talk about it, and I had said this earlier, is I'm giving the show so much grace because it's like I'm filling in the blanks. I'm like, oh, I can see how this would happen. I could see how Angela would see these things, but that's me filling in the blanks from the writers. You both are totally accurate when you call out the show for having not shown us these things, especially if you're new. Like, I think the thing about a sitcom is you should be able to be placed into that world and understand everything that's going on. And I feel like this show doesn't necessarily do that. Like, it didn't fill in those blanks. It's only because I've been watching the show that I'm able to fill in those blanks. And I'm being so courteous with it.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to say this too, because I feel like I'm sounding fairly critical. I think Shawn's poetry in this episode is beautiful. Like, I have to say, even as a kid, this episode made such a significant impression on me in terms of how I approach poetry in school, even. This was like the catalyst to me looking into like Walt Whitman and Edgar Allan Poe and Robert Frost, and like it really like took me on the journey with poetry, because I was really enamored with the poetry that was shared in this episode. I thought it was dope. But it's hard for me to feel connected to it when it feels so separate from what I know of this character.
Thinking about it, I feel that television itself has a weird, especially like sitcom television, has a weird relationship with poetry, because it's always like, even like, think about the majority of the episode. What kind of poetry do we get? We don't get Shawn's poetry throughout. We get Shawn's poetry for 1-2 scenes, and then the rest is all Cory's poetry. It's all joke poetry. It's like poetry isn't taken seriously on sitcoms in a lot of ways, and there's so many shows. I think earlier, didn't we have an episode earlier, something about peaches?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah, there is an episode where they weirdly, it's like one of the first dates between Cory and Topanga. Kids go to like a poetry lounge and just hear this guy doing a whole poetry about
a spoken
eating a peach.
word.
A spoken word about eating a peach, which is very sexual, by the way.
Is this the episode where everybody in the thing is like, I don't think everybody's in there kissing, but is this the one?
They are paired up. You're right. Like Fenny is what, like, that was another thing about that episode, is that Fenny and his date are in the exact same situation with I think
Amy and I remember Amy and
Alan, but then Cory and Topanga. Everybody in that room is like, fuck me vibes. And then and it's like, this is inappropriate for all y'all to be here right now. Somebody need to be somewhere else.
But yeah, to your point, Teach, poetry has been introduced, and it was giving some kind of reverence in that episode. It kind of showed that there was a pull towards it, but we haven't seen it referenced since. I also think it's really funny that Fenny is the person who hosts the spoken word night. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a spoken word night at a college, but I don't see faculty ever doing that. So this dude is just constantly just being like, I need extra money. What else can I sign up for, guys?
Again, he has to pay for that, what is it, doctorate degree that he just automatically got to start teaching this course.
He's just coming out of retirement.
He earned that degree.
I didn't say he didn't earn it. I'm saying that out of nowhere.
He earned it in the sheets.
Yes.
Fenny has a PhD, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes. He said, Dean, I need I'm retired. I need this.
It's so funny. So I will say that I want to go back to the first scene, which is just to say that first of all, as you said, Shawn's poetry is amazing. I actually think it's really good. But let's talk about the reaction, the immediate reaction, which is Cory being like, boo. And I was like, okay, first of all, this is the middle of class. The audacity again to just stand up and not only interrupt the class and be a disruption and kind of try to take over, but then also to assume that everyone agrees with you when A, someone in the class wrote it, and B, this episode just feels like everyone is tired of Cory. And I don't know where that's coming from, but like I will say, I was watching this being like, oh, everyone is done with this dude.
I was so happy to see Shawn finally call out Cory in a serious way this episode, because to your point, like, so he's like mocking art essentially in the opening scene, and this isn't the first time, because if we go back to the celery poster episode, he was mocking the art and the artist, and like openly
in their face. Yes.
Openly to her face, mocking the artist for her art, and then kind of going on about how mediocre he is. So it's just really interesting that Cory is so quick to mock art, and he knows himself that he doesn't have the talent to produce art. So it's just really interesting to know that this dude who has nothing to actually contribute from an artistic perspective is very critical of those who are expressing themselves artistically.
I feel like those type of outbursts in class, I feel like Cory is overall a good guy, but I guess since Fenny is his teacher, Fenny just be like, okay, yeah, you got an outburst. But I feel like it brings him back to like season 1 or 2 Cory, where he's just the main person in the classroom talking. And back then, I guess nobody said anything because it's just Cory. But now people are like, all right, Cory, we're tired of his outburst.
Well, I will say it's interesting because a few things. One, you were like, it reminded you of like seasons 2 or 3. Actually, I would say like talking about the pod again, they're listening, they're watching season 1, and in season 1, Cory is a brat. Like season 1, Boy Meets World, Cory is a brat of a character, but that's kind of like he's supposed to be like Dennis the Menace or whatever. But when you take that and you put that person in college, it's actually really interesting because it's just disruptive, and it is this kind of like narcissistic personality that, again, everyone seems over. And the reason why I'm bringing this out is because in the show, you just said everyone's like, yeah, but he's a good guy, and it's like, but is he though, or is he just white? Like, is it just one of those things?
Well, Zach Morris wasn't even like this in college.
That's what I'm saying. It's like everyone's like, oh, but he's a nice guy. And it's like, but is he though?
See, you made such a good point that this is season 1 Cory and its return. Like season 1 Cory went away. And when he went to high school, he starts high school in season 2, junior high, but he is so unsure of himself when he goes from this environment that he recognizes to this new place. And he's like, oh, I got to reinvent myself to keep up with the cool kids, to keep up with the older kids. And then we get into this like Cory that's a little bit more self-deprecating. He's less bratty. But for some reason, in college, he has this return as a brat, which comes across as an asshole, as someone who is constantly crossing boundaries, as someone who's constantly ignoring the people around him, asking him to stop. And so, like, it's really hard to find any of this charming or any, like, I would if I were watching 12-year-old Ben Savage do it. It comes across completely different watching a 19-year-old talk to people this way. So it just the charm is lost from Ben's performance.
It's really funny because this week on the show Abbott Elementary, which you guys know I'm a huge fan of, they literally have an entire episode about someone being a class disruptor. And I was like, that's like, I just find it very interesting because that's what Cory is in this. He takes away everyone's like ability to learn. In Fenny's class, he takes away from everyone's enjoyment of the poetry night. Like people listen at the poetry night.
I gotta stop you right there. I gotta stop.
Go ahead.
He's taking away everybody's ability to learn. Fenny only teaches him. What do you mean?
Yes!
Fenny takes the whole lesson plan and rip it up because Cory has a problem with Topanga. So you know what? I'm gonna teach that.
You're so right, dude. Like Fenny allows Cory's like erratic behavior and he approves of it in a way that's disruptive to the other kids' education. Like if Fenny really was this teacher, he wouldn't allow Cory to have these outbursts in class. And it just feels like too that like in college, like other kids would just get annoyed with him. Other kids would tell him to shut up. Other kids would roll their eyes in a way that we're not seeing other than from Shawn in this episode.
Well, and so, oh God, I'm so sorry, everyone, that it's all over the place, but we're hitting all of these things because to your point, let's take a look at the Eric, Jack, and Rachel storyline just for a second. Other students are interacting with each other. They are being like, yo, you're being disruptive right now. Hey, like I'm trying to study. I'm trying to like everyone's tense and stressed and they're just trying to get things together. So someone like Cory just making an outburst in the middle of class, mind you, this is probably a morning class that you have another class to go to afterwards. You may have like a job that you're trying to do, and this dude just interrupted the class again to like tell everyone, am I right? And you're just like, no, you're not right. And Like, I have other things to do. What is the homework assignment?
I'm so glad you brought up the connection between the B storyline and the A storyline, because this is another example of there being two different Boy Meets Worlds. All these kids go to the same college, but apparently only 3 of them have finals coming up. Why aren't Cory, Shawn, Topanga, and Angela freaking out about finals? It's their first semester of college. Why aren't they worried about this? They're going to poetry night. Cory is not studying at all. He's writing ridiculous poems in his free time. It's like, it's a completely different, not even university, a different part of the school year, it feels like, from the other storyline that's going on. There's no consistency between what these kids are going through in college.
I feel like the B plot could have very much been avoided. I am a simple person. I'm gonna just get up and go to my room and study. Like I'm just simple. Maybe that's not how they were, but the library part, I would have avoided.
Yo, if we're touching on the B storyline, I will say that there is something about it that reminds me very much. There's an episode in I want to say season 4, where finals are coming up and all the kids in high school are like stressed out about the schedule for finals, to the point where they end up vandalizing Feeny's house. They vandalize the school, and like Shawn and Cory and Topanga have to stand up against the bullies for John Adams High. It felt very much like that in terms of, hey, finals are coming up and it's creating a lot of stress in a way that's making kids act erratically. It feels like something the show has touched on before. And so like it's kind of cool in that way, that like to show that like, hey, this is how people actually act around finals times, except for obviously our main characters who are writing poetry.
Well, I'll say this to the B storyline, which we can circle back because it's just to do this. So we have Jack, Eric, and Rachel, who are like very stressed. As you said, I think it is interesting, as you put it out, TC, that finals aren't like certain classes just don't have finals and others don't in college. It's just like there's finals season. And one thing that I hate that television does this all the time. She's like, I know that these finals are 90% of our grade. It's just like, no. What curriculum is this? What are you even studying for?
One test.
The final is 90%, then it might as well be an online class. Why am I at college if the test is the only thing that matters? That is ridiculous.
Skip the class, just study for the test. Like, honestly, nothing else in that class matters but the test.
And by the way, it's Feeny's class, we find out. So, like,
because he teaches every class. Like, he just started at this university. He teaches everything.
He was in the class like a few episodes ago. Now he's teaching.
He was a student. Thank you.
And so also, it's really funny. Not to say that professors don't teach, like, you know, literature 101 and literature 201. Like, that's very possible. However, Topanga, Shawn, Cory, and Angela are in Feeny's class. Later on, we find out that Jack, Rachel, and Eric are in Feeny's class. Well, you're right. Why are there not like just joint learning? like I would feel like they would all be studying, or you would get another one of those things where it's like Eric, Jack, and Rachel have taken this part of the class before, so they're helping Cory, Shawn, and Topanga and Angela. You know, it's just like it's two different worlds. And I think one of the things that I'm learning just by watching the show at this stage is it just doesn't feel like whoever are the writers at this point in time have thought about writing a sitcom holistically. They're thinking about things in storylines, they're thinking about things in scenes, and they're not thinking about the show itself.
Well, this is something that we've talked about before. I mean, prior to Netflix, shows were written to be watched as one episode. I'm going to throw this on TBS in the middle of the afternoon, and you guys need to be able to watch it without any context whatsoever.
Yes and no, because here's the thing. That would be a great excuse for this episode if this episode didn't want us to remember that Angela still has feelings for Shawn.
You're right.
And Shawn still has feelings for Angela. So this episode wants you to remember events of the past. Yeah. It wants you to be invested in what has happened and what will happen. So you can't say, hey, I want you to be invested in what will happen and what's what has happened, and at the exact same time say, hey, this is supposed to be a condensed episode. I wrote that with this in mind.
You bring up a really good point, but I want to ask, what did you feel when Cory read Shawn's poem without his permission, and what did you think of Shawn's reaction to that poem, to what happened?
I love it. You talked about boundaries early on, and one of the things that I love is that one of the things that I'll say bothers me about Boy Meets World is it touches on great storylines and then backs away immediately. Like the idea of Shawn going up to Cory and being like, okay, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? and him being like, I'm your best friend. No. None of this joking. Like, this isn't, this is serious. How dare you? How dare you violate my privacy? How dare you ignore my feelings? How dare you cross all of these boundaries and tell me what is best for me? Yeah. Even as a close friend, this is inappropriate and I will not stand for it. It has that amazing scene and then never really touches it again.
You're right. It's really frustrating because, to your point, we've been watching this show and every episode we're like, wow, Cory really has an issue with boundaries. Cory really has an issue with boundaries from episode to episode. And finally, someone calls him out, of all people, his best friend. And we see maybe the most serious conflict between Shawn and Cory that we've seen in like a season or two. And you're right, it fizzles out. Not only does it just get solved with a my bad, but later on in the episode, Angela's like, oh, well, Cory, you mean well, to almost excuse all of the behavior. So it's really frustrating that they call him out and then excuse it by being like, oh, well, you know, I know you mean well. It's like, oh, well, no, you can mean well and still be destructive.
I think the reason behind that is the simple forgiveness or my bad is because I'm gonna be honest with you. If I myself had a friend I've been friends with since I was 2 years old, this is my best friend. This man has been through every mode of my life, including knowing my parents, knowing everything about my family, been there for every moment of my life, basically. I've been there for every moment of their life. If I'm Cory, I can understand why he feels like I can do this because Shawn ain't gonna get mad at me for say, like, friends do break up after a while, but this is like a 18, 19 year friendship, and it's not just a friendship, it's like a brotherhood / whatever you want to call it. So I feel like Cory's not justified, but he's more like, I feel like I can do this because it's Shawn. If it's Angela, obviously he might still try to do it, but I'm saying Shawn is different because Shawn's feelings doesn't matter because I can just solve it with a sorry.
All right, so there are a few things that I want to say that you just said that I think are really important. Number one, you said if it was Angela, he would still probably do it. And that is the problem, is that it's not that it's Shawn, it's that this is a habit that Cory has. And Shawn is the one who was like, okay, you know what? Enough. Yeah. That's the real thing. That's why it's, as TC pointed out, it's so impactful, because someone who has known you your entire life, who is willing to give you grace, is just like, dude, this is a habit. Like this isn't like a one-off or you meant well. This is you doing that thing that no one has really called you out for, which is crossing boundaries, being invasive, and trying to mold the world to fit what you want it to be.
To Prime's point, there is something that's very toxic about these relationships where it's like, oh, we're so close and I've known you for so long that I know there aren't going to be serious consequences to this, which allows you a lot of times, which allows people to treat the people they love shittier than the people they don't love in a lot of ways. And, you know, having that family dynamic, it's almost like, you know, if you can imagine like an uncle or a cousin or whatever, if someone was doing this to you, just because you have this long history doesn't negate the fact that I'm really upset about this. And to reinsert boundaries over and over again in a consistent relationship is sometimes so much harder than doing it with new relationships. Like Shawn, like Cory and Angela's friendship is just starting. So Angela can kind of lay out how she wants to be treated, whereas Shawn is not afforded that same luxury in a lot of ways. So it's interesting how the history of their relationship is almost the thing that's detrimental to their relationship and how Cory treats Shawn.
I feel like for Cory's sake, if you know him for like over a year, you've been to his house and his kitchen, he's like, you've been to my house. I feel like Cory was one of those people where if you've been to my house, then hey, it's whatever it is. Like, because
you
everybody that's
mean
his
that
friend,
we're close, right?
no, like for example, if him and Jack have been friends for like 5 months, but then Jack is at his house, he was like, oh well, we're close then because you've been to my house and we've known each other for this amount of time. Like I feel like any length of time, Cory knows somebody he thinks.
That's,
but I want to say.
I was just going to say to Prime's point, he assumed him and Angela were so much closer than they were simply because of the duration that they knew each other and not because of the depth of their relationship.
Okay, what I want to say is everything that you're saying probably makes sense from Cory's point of view. I'm calling it out for what it is, which is to say that even though Cory assumes, oh, it's fine, it's clearly not. Like there's all of these times where Cory goes, but I'm your best friend. And Shawn goes, no. In this point in time, in this moment, you're someone who's crossing my boundaries. In this moment, you're someone who's not respecting me. In this moment, you are not acting like a best friend.
Yeah.
And because you have history with someone does not mean you get to violate them or treat them any way that you please. I will say earlier this week, I had an attitude with my fiance, and I didn't really say anything, but I was just like not being a good person. And the next day I like had to go back and apologize, and I had to be like, yo, if anyone else had treated you the way that I treated you yesterday, I would hate that person. And I had, humble and apologize. And I think that what's upsetting is you don't get that in this show from Cory. How, like, there's a moment where Cory just goes, hey, we good? And Shawn's like, I mean, it is what it is.
And what I really love,
hang out with.
what I really love too is that right after he reads the poem, Cory tries to just do oh, I'm sorry. And Shawn's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear I'm sorry. I want to hear I was wrong, which was like, I don't want to hear like, oh, forgive me, I have good intentions. I want you to take accountability for what you've done to me, which is something that no one has straight out just said to Cory before, and something we always are just like, please, someone hold this dude accountable for something that he's doing. And Shawn hardly does. He calls him out, but then he really gives him a pass for the rest of the episode.
Well, and what I'm saying is because it's so funny how this show constantly literally twists itself to get Cory out of being the one at fault, because shortly after that happens, Shawn reveals that the poem is about Angela, and then Angela slaps Shawn, goes all Will Smith, and just backhands Shawn, and you're like, yo, like that is now what we're talking about.
You know what? I was really interested in the fact too that during that argument, Shawn kind of reveals to Cory that like, hey, I did write these feelings for Angela. It's almost as if in that moment where he's calling Cory out, Shawn for the first time opens up about the side of himself that he's kept hidden from Cory. And as an audience, you're almost like, I can see why, bruh. I can see why you didn't trust this dude with any of it, because he literally exploded your life. Not only did he read your shit out loud after you didn't want him to, now he's got your ex pissed at you. She slapped you in the face, and now you have this whole shit storm you have to work out, all because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Like, all of this is because of Cory, really, that Angela has to go through this emotional roller coaster.
And Cory pays zero price. I think that's the thing that really
goes back to Topanga and just.
And then the episode telling Topanga she's not giving him any to everyone. This is my point. Like this, I think the thing that I both love and hate about Boy Meets World is I think we all as audience members, we really latch on to the lessons that it does try to teach and the storylines that are almost there. Like the idea of that scene where Shawn and Cory are going at it, and Shawn is so serious, and you think we're gonna get a real conflict in their dynamic, fizzles out, goes nowhere. And it's a great opportunity. This episode is a great opportunity for them to explore what it is between their friendship and how Cory has crossed lines and has taken his friendship with Shawn for granted and has overstepped. But instead, it just becomes this storyline about Shawn and Angela not communicating their real feelings to each other. And it's like, that's also a really good storyline, but that's not what we were talking about.
And to make it about that justifies Cory's actions. He really did know what was best for Shawn and Shawn and Angela. They just didn't know. So it took him going in. He even says to Angela, he's like, "I'm sorry." No, you know what? Actually, I'm not sorry. I did need to read this. He doesn't like he took it back
that
immediately
multiple times in the season and in seasons where it's like, I'm sorry. And he was like, you know what? No. I'm not sorry. And he goes on a monologue of why he does. Look, I'm sorry. I always sound like I hate when Cory does these monologues where he's doing like the.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
For the listeners who can't see, he's doing a lot of hand motions.
Pointing and like waving my arms because he does that a lot. Yeah.
He does.
Those monologues, like, especially the one. Have we got that point yet? But yeah, the point where he's telling his mom off about Topanga, why they should get married. Like, bro, this is your mom.
Here's the thing: all of those moments, the ones that you're talking about, that again are supposed to be moments of Cory kind of like standing up for what's right and saying it like it is. In the context of the real world, which is what we're supposed to be meeting, Cory's an asshole in each and every one of those. If Cory's over exaggerating and using his hands and talking with emphasis, if we actually look at the context around his speech, almost each and every time Cory is speaking with hubris and is the asshole in the situation. And later on, actually should apologize, but never does.
100% too, because he's real quick to get loud with like his friends and his family. But when Stuart put a move on Topanga, he was like, excuse me, Stuart, can I talk to you about this? Topanga said that you put a move on her. I just want to like, maybe talk it through. It's like, where was all that hand raising? Why ain't your voice getting loud now that like you're actually pissed at someone?
He did throw this guy through the window. So
he did throw him through the window.
Eventually. Yeah. But it was just like, like he has an attitude towards people he cares about where he just feels like he can just be holier than thou and like lay down his point. But it usually is a very selfish, like narrow view of a situation that he doesn't fully understand. One thing I just want to quickly. Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say.
All right, I'm going to say my thing, which is to say, I'm going to say something I haven't said in a while, which is this is white boy logic. This is this idea of, no, I know what's best. Not only do I know what's best for me, I know what's best for you and you, for the class, for my friends, for the coffee shop. I know what's best. And even though I did something that everyone disagrees with, because I know it had good intentions, I'm right. And everyone else should forgive me for it because my intentions were good. And good intentions does not matter. Like, it's all about the results and the actions and the consequences after. And at this point in time, his actions have led to Shawn being more closed off. It actually shows. He's more closed off. And Angela actually, what probably could have been Shawn working through his emotions and actually coming to Angela at some point in time on his own terms. Now he was forced into a situation. Shawn backed out of it, which I'm not giving Shawn a pass for either, because I do believe that he should communicate his feelings. But instead, because he was pushed into a corner, he very quickly was defensive. Was like, oh, by the way, I wrote that at an older time. Don't worry about it. And Angela is like, oh, you know what? That's cool. I've moved on. And being forced to have these conversations when they weren't ready made it to where now they both aren't getting what they want. And Cory thinks that that's on them, but in reality, it's on him for forcing the situation.
100%. And not only does Cory push Shawn away from communicating openly to Angela, it actually opens up an opportunity for Shawn to be like, hey, Topanga, I want to talk to you about this. Fuck Cory. Every time I try to get him involved, it doesn't work out. Like, me and you are now going to have a friendship where, because you seem like someone I can confide in, which I have to say I actually enjoyed. I like Shawn and Topanga having a friendship, Cory and Angela having a friendship that isn't about like, oh, we're two guys and these are our girlfriends and we all hang out. Like, this is the first time that we're seeing like a true friendship, even between Shawn and Topanga. There hasn't been a lot of, hey, this is just you and me. This has nothing to do with Cory. So it was really interesting to see that, but to know that Shawn's hand was forced into that because he was so over Cory's bullshit is a little disappointing.
Now, just a quick question. Have we been past the Christmas episode yet? Or we haven't? Yeah.
No.
I gotta come back for the Christmas episode, because that episode, there's this one moment that makes me so upset of what he does. But yeah.
You know, Prime, I have to say this, you know, I've seen these episodes like you. I had the DVDs. Actually, even before the DVDs came out, I ordered bootlegs from like Japan. Like, I'm really a huge fan of the show. Siege, for the most part, is watching this for the first time. Like, he saw some episodes on Disney.
Okay.
But like, this is really like him digesting this all for the first time. So he doesn't know a lot of what's coming. So when he's like, you're spoiling it, he is right. He doesn't know.
For the people, my bad. Yeah.
No, it's all good. I just I do think it's something to look forward to in it, and I am very interested now, like, about the Christmas episode. But I'll say that to your point, T, we don't really get a lot of Shawn and Topanga moments. So I did like this, but I didn't think about, and I totally think that you're right, that we get this Shawn and Topanga moment because Cory, again, there were consequences to Cory's actions that they don't really emphasize, but it's true. The reason why he's having this conversation with Topanga is because he can't have it with Cory.
Yeah.
Cory has crossed the boundary so big that Shawn is no longer comfortable being vulnerable with him. And it's kind of like just kind of thrown off to the side. But I actually think that that's actually a really big consequence that should be talked about. I also I was like, we actually are getting a friendship from Angela and Cory. Like, we're starting to see this develop, which I think is very interesting. It's not the greatest thing. I have problems with how Angela has handled a lot in this episode. Number one, what's going on with her hair? Like, I was like, who did this girl's hair?
She did.
I'm gonna say maybe
she did. No one did her hair for her ever.
That's what I was gonna say. What I'm saying is, this felt like they were like, here, you do it. You know what I mean? It's just like,
they didn't have anybody to do her hair. If
that's like, here's no. It's not that they didn't have anyone.
They didn't hire anyone.
Yeah, they didn't hire anyone. It's a very big difference. They don't have anyone would mean that no one in the world existed who could do her hair.
And I have to give her like credit, because sometimes her hair looks fly. Like, sometimes she really does. Like, her locks are looking great, shit like that. But like, yeah, there are some times where I'm just like, you know what? This was the 90s. There was a lot of experimentation going on. Like, Spice Girls were big. There was a lot of weird things happening with hair,
It's great that she's wearing it natural, and there's another problem with that. I'm just like, there are lots of things that's going on in here that I was just like, they didn't care. It's just how I want to say that. Because again, we know how they would be if this was in it. Like, I've listened to the pod at this point in time. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't want to listen to the pod specifically because I didn't want to be. It was someone who kept saying I listened to the pod. But they talk about how important hair is on that show in general. So the idea that Angela's hair is not given the same consideration.
I just wanted to say that, like, it's not that hair was just a big deal. It was that Michael Jacobs, the producer of the show, was kind of obsessed with the idea of hair. The whole hair storyline we see with Cory feeling like everyone has good hair but him is kind of reflective to how Michael Jacobs feels about hair. He places a lot of importance on it. You see Will Friedle has an amazing head of hair this season. Topanga's hair is always coming through. Shawn's hair always looks great. So, like, I feel like hair is just one of those things that the producer of the show is kind of like throwing in as like, hey, this is something that's significant. But to your point, it's not significant enough to do anything for Angela. So,
but then also to them, the people who are producing this show is about Topanga, Cory, and Shawn. That is who we're supposed to be focusing on. And in the episode that honestly has so much to do with Angela, they still don't respect Angela as a character, really.
Yeah. Well, again, the only thing we're ever seeing from Angela, especially this season, as they try to flesh out her character more, is just to make her more involved with Cory and Shawn. Like, there's nothing about Angela that we know about her. Like, even this whole thing with Shawn writing, like, I think part of the reason why, like, you were like, this is kind of the thing that killed Girl Meets World. This is the start of it, because this is the start of Shawn being this kind of like emo writer that we've never known him to be. And Angela, what is her thing? What is her love? What is her passion? Like I said the same thing about Rachel earlier. What is her major? What are they in college for? We know nothing about these women other than their relationships with men.
And to that point, and to your point, I will also say that thinking about it, it took them a while to figure out what to do with Topanga, because I think when we look back on it, seasons 2 and 3, you're right. Topanga, we were like, why aren't we getting more? Why don't we know anything about her? She comes in, she's like not girl of the week, and that is her role.
I actually feel the opposite. I feel like Topanga was a way more fleshed out character in the beginning of the series and lost all of the essence of what Topanga was as the series went on to accommodate Cory. That's just my take on it.
I think they started incorporating more actual Danielle Fishel into.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So.
But to that point, I guess what we're saying is, if we're starting to see more of Danielle Fishel and Topanga, and we're starting to see more of Ryder Strong in
Shawn,
then they just didn't care to get to know Trina to try to put more Trina into Angela.
I bet that's probably the case, because the show was written for Ben, so you can't really say we need more Ben when the show was written for Ben. And then Eric and Wilfredel's Eric, it's like, yeah, just do this. You know, I always call Wilfredel the Josh Server of all the Nickelodeon people.
Great example.
The skinny white dude and all that. Great personality, almost kind of like the Jim Carrey of all that.
Yeah, what Jim Carrey was to Living Single, he was to all that. Totally.
He's basically the like, anything you want me to do, throw somebody off a cliff or fall or whatever, I'm that guy.
The last thing that I want to say on this episode, outside of the idea again that Cory is just like yelling into the void that he's not getting any, which is like not charming at all. I think T, you put it perfectly. The charm that was Cory is starting to fade, and it's starting to fade, I feel, for everyone. There's a moment where Cory comes into Angela's room and is like, I have nothing to say. And Angela's like, well, that's a first. Like again, they're just getting tired of it.
Yo, you said something that I thought was really interesting. You were like, hey, Topanga feels like she's Topanga's getting a lot more like Danielle Fishel, and Shawn is getting a lot more like Ryder Strong. Is it that Cory is getting more like Ben Savage? Is this an insight to who Ben Savage is? We did that episode, Kid Gets Acquainted with the Universe, where Ben Savage, our whatever his name was, Ben Sandwich,
yeah,
was kind of an asshole to people on set. So it's one of those things where I'm like, is this?
I look, they ain't coming for me. They coming for you.
I'm just hypothesizing based off of what I'm seeing reflected in the other characters. Will Friedle's character feels more like Will Friedle. Ryder Strong's feels like more Ryder Strong, and same with Danielle. So I just have to put the pieces together and wonder if Cory is more like Ben.
I have a question for you. If you were given your own show at 12, and you are the star of your own show, you can't do. Nobody can touch you on this show. You feeding all these people, and you're 19 now. I mean, I'm just
talk about it.
Let's talk about it, especially when you come from a legacy of this. Like, you saw your older brother do it for years, and now it's your turn in the light. You feel like this is something that's like normal in a way. Like, it's interesting.
Here's the thing. I think I let people come to their own conclusions. As I said earlier, the characters are starting to reflect. And as I said also earlier, it seems like the charm is starting to fade a little bit because they wrote the line, oh, it's very shocking that you have nothing to say. It's starting to show that the show itself is getting tired of Cory's antics.
Well, I think they just like after they had the big like Cory and Topanga breakup storyline of last season, it just feels like they don't know what to do with them. It's like, oh, okay, we're not going to have them get married right now. We're going to save that for Sweeps Week. So what are we going to do in the meantime? And it just, like you said, it's this like de-evolution back to who he was when he was 12 years old in a way that's really annoying. And so, I mean, I don't know how this is going to flesh out, but I feel like we're at the point where the show starts to get off the rails. Like truly from like zooming out and just looking at the show as a whole, I feel like the back half of season 6 to season 7 is where things really start to get kind of like, what is this show? So as we keep watching, I'm sure we'll see more examples of that.
Siege, season 7 is a doozy. Like there are some moments where like, especially with, I'm not going to spoil, I'm going to partially spoil it. Eric and Fenny. There's just some ones where I feel like they had nothing to do for them that week. They was like, yeah, just come in with a fork in your mouth and walk out. Like it was just random stuff. So look forward to that. You know?
Okay, it's very, very interesting. Is there anything else you want to say about this episode? I think T had kind of like brought it up earlier, but like anything else you feel about this episode? Bruh moment of this episode, where are you at?
An episode that never ceases to make me laugh. Even two moments. The first moment is when they're sitting down and the girl troll is like, "What you gonna do about it?" And then she stands up. Rachel's like, "Girl," and then she stands up. She's like, "Nowhere." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good joke," because like she's so tall. It's always a good visual. And then another one is the Fenny and Eric confrontation or whatever. He was like, "Oh, you forgot to do your homework." He was like, "Yeah." And then he goes and he looks at the thing. He was like, "Oh," he was like, "I told you did bad." I mean, I told you.
I did. Here's the thing. I did like that little. I told you. I don't know why, but it felt so authentic and very fun. And that is like that chemistry between Will and Belle.
For a moment, is that Siege? You got one?
Honestly, I'm torn because I can't believe Angela slapped Shawn. Like, I just don't feel like it was
deserved.
Yeah. And I don't feel like it made sense. And I feel like it felt very quote unquote. I don't feel this way, but the only word I can think of is hysterical women. Like women be emotional. You know what I mean? Like it felt like an overreaction without real context. And then they kind of did context and then they kind of had her apologize for it. But I was like, no, like, you just slapped this dude. Like, and in all actuality, there's zero context for her to do this. Like, and it's just kind of like, so like, that's honestly one of the things where I was just like, I don't know.
She could have just looked at him and stormed off crying and had the same result versus the slap, which to your point is kind of distracting.
Exactly. That, and then also just kind of this idea of the poem at the end, frustration. It feels very inappropriate for and exposing of Topanga.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm gonna just say I feel like the post-credit quote unquote scenes in this season is all just like don't got nothing to do with that. But they were just like go up there and ad-lib.
Yeah, feels like improv.
Especially when they do karaoke at the end of one of the episodes. Yeah, just go up there, do that.
Totally.
You and TC have this habit of just spoiling. You're like, oh, I'm not gonna spoil. I'm gonna spoil a little bit.
This show is 25, 30 years old, Siege. Like it's so insane that we're spoiling something that's this old.
But y'all did the episode though, right?
No, not yet. It's coming up. I know it's hard. That's the thing, is that it's hard to like mentally like place them in the order to be like, what has it come up yet?
I thought y'all did. My bad. Sorry, you know what?
All good.
I'm just gonna quickly say that my bruh moment was Shawn getting so upset with Cory, only for Cory to be like, you know what? I'm not sorry. Like, it really, like, the bruh moment is that even after being called out so like seriously by someone he cares about, he still doesn't feel like he needs to change. And so like now I'm at the point where it's just like, bruh, like how many people need to tell you that you're a problem before you start like checking yourself? So I think to me, that's like, even though that's like not really a moment, it's kind of like the whole episode, it's still my takeaway.
But we've talked about this. Part of that problem is right after everyone tells him that he was inappropriate, they later on go, well, you meant well. You're a good guy. And they just
the 90s good guy trope is, I'm discovering, one of the most problematic tropes that
you mean Zach Morris, the good guy that manipulates everybody, that does what he wants? What?
Yeah, that's what I mean. In the 90s, it was like you could manipulate large groups of people to try to get your will and still be seen as like a good-hearted person. And now it just feels like, hey, the way you treat other people fucking matters. And so it's just interesting to kind of review these series of television shows, because it's not just this one, where the main character is seen as sympathetic. We talk about Ross Geller all the time being one of these guys, where it's like you're supposed to feel sympathetic for this person who is just an asshole and just kind of pushing their will on everyone else. So
I need a Zach Morris as trash, but for Cory Matthews.
Oh,
that would be incredible. That's what our whole podcast is.
We used to, yeah, pretty much. We used to do this all the time. Just like, Cory is a terrible person. And it's really interesting because every other character around Cory is actually really worth looking in. And it's just kind of like unfortunate that the show literally breaks it back. It breaks its back to center Cory again and again. Like, Cory is the one who actually says Shawn's poetry. Shawn doesn't read his poetry once in this episode, which is crazy. An episode about his poetry.
Maybe that's what feels so like separate from Shawn, is that we never actually see Shawn communicate this poetry.
That's a very good point.
What are your lessons? What's the lesson? What's the takeaway lesson from this episode? The Fenny lesson. Mind your business? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Mind your business. Stay in your lane, Cory. That's the main takeaway. Stay in your lane.
But see, what's interesting about that is, like, for the Eric storyline, it's completely opposite. The Eric actually does good and helps everyone out by getting them out of their head. But I mean, to your point, he doesn't do good himself. So I don't know. It's like, what?
Wow. You're right. Like, it seems like they're trying to connect the two storylines as like both of the Matthews brothers are, you know, tinkering with other people's lives for the better, seemingly. But in Cory's case, it's not for the better of the people around him. And for Eric's case, it's not for the betterment of himself. So It's just really interesting how that kind of connects in that way.
Exactly. My Fenny taught me, I was just going to say, is communicate. What the episode was trying to say is Shawn should be communicating to Angela. Angela should be communicating to Shawn. Shawn was right to communicate his feelings and the boundary crossing to Cory. I think it's communication, be honest, be upfront. It's unfortunate that Cory and Shawn actually have like this rift between them that's going to be repaired, but like, because things weren't said, there's actually a little bit of tension. And as we showed earlier, Topanga is now Shawn's confidant because Shawn doesn't feel like he can be open and vulnerable with Cory.
You know, Siege, I don't want to spoil anything, but I want you to remember how you're feeling about what Shawn's feeling about Cory as we go into these upcoming episodes, because Shawn actually goes through something really serious in the next few episodes. And I would be interested to see how you view their friendship as he's struggling through this new thing that he's going to be struggling with.
Okay, very good to know. Good to know. Okay.
Time's like trying to think about what I'm talking about, but like
it can be two things you're talking about, and I'm
not talking about him and Angela. I'm talking about something completely different, and it's more about him and Jack. Yeah.
Stop talking. I'm cutting it off. You're getting too close.
So we have homework.
Grade.
Oh, grade. I'm sorry. Grade. What's the letter grade you would give this episode, Prime?
as an overall episode of Boy Meets World, I would give it a B because it still is enjoyable, even though Cory is, I don't want to say insufferable, but Cory is Cory. It still is a good episode. Like, you still feel emotion. The soft music gets you sometimes, you know. The B plot brings it down for me, but I will still give it a B because overall it was enjoyable and it's important going on in the season.
I'm gonna give it. Gosh, I kind of toyed between B- and C+, but I'm gonna say a B-. And the reason being that, like I said, I love the poetry in this episode. I know that writers actually wrote this poetry himself, so it like we have to give credit to the actual to writer Strong for that. However, like I said, it felt very disconnected from Shawn. But I will say about the B storyline, I know it probably doesn't seem like it, but this is my favorite storyline we've had between Jack, Rachel, and Eric in quite some time. Because Prime, I know you're not kind of watching these in order like we are, but this is like one of the first episodes where the main conflict between the three of them isn't these two want to fuck Rachel and they don't know how. Like, it's the first time where it's like, oh, they're in college, they're students. They actually have a storyline that's not about a Three's Company, us two living with a girl and the hijinks of it. Like, this is they actually get into them as students. So I can appreciate that. So for that reason, I say B-.
I'm not gonna say anything else on that because I want for that.
See, you did help me out with my grade of this episode because I think it went from, I was also going to give it like a C, because in reality, I feel like this episode, even though I loved everything that we were talking about it, I think that our discussion actually did more for this episode than the episode itself did. But the B storyline actually really does work for me. I think that the B storyline is actually showing, again, that Eric has a different type of intelligence and that Eric actually is really good. Like, later on, we've talked about this a little bit in Girl Meets World, but we find out that like Eric is like a politician or whatever. I was like, this is a moment where it's like, no, Eric is charismatic.
I thought that same thing when he was in the library, which I think, by the way, is the same library from the high school set, whatever. He was like giving this speech and he was like corralling people. He was being very charismatic. And I was like, oh, this is an Eric that I can see becoming a politician. So like, yeah, there was that
exactly. Oh, also, I was trying to think because Prime, you said earlier that it made you laugh. There was one like laugh out moment that I had. I couldn't remember what it was, and I just remember it was when Eric was like, "I'm going to the library," and then 5 seconds later he goes, "I don't know where the library is." And I was like, "Okay," I laughed. I was like, "That was funny." Like, homework. Prime, what homework do you have for
by homework we mean like what kind of pop culture recommendations would you suggest to our listeners?
I feel like I want to take Siege and say Pod Meets World, listen to it. But, yeah, let's see. Throw my stuff out there, you know, I might as well. And this is a Boy Meets World podcast. I did have Trina on my podcast a while ago. That's when the stuff came out about her and Topanga being mad and stuff, Daniel Fisher being mad and stuff. And then we did the episode like the day of it came out. She was like,
wow.
She was like, wait about 20 minutes and check your phone, and then we can do that.
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know, I would say Homework Pod Meets World is just listen to it. It's a very good, entertaining show, and definitely I put a stamp on that.
Awesome.
Honestly, I'm not gonna stop. Like, I would tell you right now, I've been listening to that episodes for a long while, and I'm like, why is anyone listening to us? This is like, they got the good stuff. They got the inside scoop. They have the same reflections.
Yo, I will say what I love about that episode is like, and Prime, maybe you know this, that when the DVDs came out, there was like 1 or 2 episodes that actually had cast commentary, and I ate that shit up. Like, I love the cast commentary of the DVDs, but I think they're, in general, after all the DVDs came out, there was only like 3 or 4 episodes that even had commentary. So going back and look,
like one, is it one every disc or maybe
like one every disc or something like that has a commentary. And that's why I love this podcast so much, because I'm getting the cast commentary on every single episode, which is what I've longed for the longest time. So
yeah, definitely. Especially if you're just in a commentary track, because like they play the episode for you, and you just like, and this was the commentary tracks came out like way after they was like in college, I believe.
Yeah.
So
It came out in like the aughts, like 20 years ago. So it's 15 years ago. So it's interesting to see how things have changed since then.
Yeah.
So my homework for this, it's so funny that you guys bring this up. My homework for this week is Interview with the Vampire, the series on AMC. It is actually really good. It's something that I've kind of like been obsessed with. They handle everything amazingly. It's one of those things where it's like they did the right version of a reboot or requel or whatever you want to call it. Like expanding this universe has been done so well. They made Louis a black man, and it's really interesting. They handle the dynamics between Louis and Lestat perfectly. Like you get black characters that are black characters. Like these black people aren't new to being black. Like they didn't just find out today, which I feel like a lot of shows where they have a black character, that black character either isn't black. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they talked about like being black in isolation. Like I think Angela is a perfect example of this, where it's like she's black, but like that's only her skin tone. There's nothing about her in general, her personality, her character, her story arcs that actually acknowledges her blackness, and they don't do that in this show. They really do embrace and they give it culture. There's lines of dialogue, there's inflection that you're like, oh no, whoever wrote this has an understanding of black culture. But also it's just a really good vampire story, a really good dynamic, and a really good as I said, remake, requel, whatever you want to call it.
You know, Siege, you know me, I'm obsessed with horror, and I see everything horror related. I've never seen the Interview with the Vampire movie.
Oh my god, it was my movie like early on. I watched it early, and I was like, oh, I loved this movie. But also, it was funny because to me, I've always seen it as like they're very, very blatant with this is a gay love story. And in the movie, I guess it's implied, but I was like, oh no, it was blatant to me then.
Like it's always been gay.
Yeah, it was blatant. And like I was talking to my fiance, and he was like, you know, I didn't think of it as a gay story. I was like, how do you watch that movie and not think of this? They are a same-sex couple with a kid, and you didn't think this was like they were roommates to you? Like, but anyway, I do think that the embracing of the sexuality, the embracing of the interracial, it actually just takes all of those things. It takes intersectionality and applies it to something that is vampire. And
cool.
I think it's great. What is your homework?
You know, I started watching The Midnight Club on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I saw the advertising for it.
Yeah, The Midnight Club on Netflix is the closest thing to an Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot that we're gonna get. Like,
it looks like it was going to be.
It's like, okay, so essentially what this is that you have these group of kids and they're all in a hospice for teenagers. They're all terminally ill and they're all dying. Like, this isn't like a spoiler. This is just kind of thrown out there. So you have these kids that are all dying, and they're just have such a morbid Black humor associated towards death. And these are the groups that are meeting at midnight every night to tell ghost stories. But before they tell a ghost story, they all make a promise, because they're like, hey, sitting around this room, like three of us aren't going to be here in 6 months. So let's make a promise that if we die and we become ghosts, we're going to do everything possible to communicate with our group once we get to the other side. I'm just going to throw that out there, and you can do what you want with that story.
Hey guys, so unfortunately our episode cut short this week, but we did want to thank Prime for joining us. We had a really great time recording the episode. You can find him at King Primetime. That's KVNGPrimetime. Thank you guys again so much for joining us this week. Remember, you can find us at Brown Meets World on all the platforms, and I guess that's time to wrap it up.
It's time to wrap it up. As always, we want to remind you guys to dream,
try, and do good.
Do good. Later, guys.
Later, guys.
When this boy meets world.